You're looking at some of the biggest Fortune 500 stocks that do business with both Canada and Mexico. Right now, Walmart, ExxonMobil, AT&T, all down. Ford is unchanged. GM up 6 pennies. Why do these names matter, particularly today? Because we now have the outline right here in my hand of how the administration plans to renegotiate the trading deal with Mexico and Canada, known as NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. It's one of the first lines the U.S. trade rep in this document released last night says, quote, "The America that existed when NAFTA was signed is not the America that we see today." Modernization. Is it time for that? Most everybody agrees that a makeover at least is in order, including the man who was the trade representative under President Obama, Ambassador Ron Kirk. All right, Ambassador, as we go through this, I looked at the first couple of pages, and it starts off very magnanimously. In fact, it even says, maintain existing reciprocal duty-free market access to agricultural goods, to industrial goods. But then you start getting into the aspects that President Obama really wanted to change. Isn't it time to at least modernize or tweak this NAFTA bill?
Well, absolutely. Look, Liz, the good thing, NAFTA was state-of-the-art when it was put into place 23 years ago, but it didn't even have an environmental chapter, didn't have a labor chapter. We didn't have intellectual property to the degree that we do now, and that's one of the reasons the United States encouraged and sort of greased the path for Mexico and Canada to be included in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And as I read the administration's objectives, I was pleased to see what you and I talked about before. They largely have incorporated what we've already agreed to through the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But in fairness, it very much is time for us to modernize and update this agreement that I believe has served all three of the countries well over the last 23 years.
Well, you look at the deficit numbers. The deficit with Canada, a couple of billion. I mean, I say a couple because 11 billion is not that much. But take a look at the trade deficit with Mexico. It's $60+ billion, and that's what the president is talking about right now. It's very unbalanced. Shouldn't it become a bit fairer? And how do we get there?
It can be, but Liz, you know, the difficulty is so much of that deficit is what we define as where a good is manufactured. And you take automobiles, for example. You mentioned in your tease what was happening to the big automaker stocks. Well, technically, a car that may start out being assembled at our General Motors plant here in Arlington, Texas, may go to Mexico City for final finishing. That car is going to count as an import to the United States from Mexico, whether 35% of the content of work or 75% of the content of work has been done in the United States. So just focusing on deficits can be a bit misleading. And of those objectives that the administration outlined, many of them really won't impact that deficit. And so I think there's a danger just saying, are we at a surplus or a negative? To make most of the advanced technological goods that we make in this country now, we have to import the raw materials, for example, to make that happen. That's going to give us a deficit with those countries, but we're then going to turn around and make products that we ship all around the world. So I think we have to be careful not to just look at this as whether we have a deficit or not.
Well, you're down there in Texas, in Dallas, not too far from the border. Do you anticipate that President Trump, through his trade representative and through the changes in NAFTA, might be able to have some type of negotiation with Mexico? All right, we'll ease up on these proposed tariffs if you chip in for the wall. That is some of the chatter that's going on here.
Listen, let me tell you, I don't believe that's going to happen. I don't believe that should happen. That's absolute lunacy. And I would tell you, Texas is one of the states, and you've seen people as diverse as Ron Kirk and John Cornyn and our governor. You know, we are a state that very much benefits from NAFTA. Texas is one of the leading export states. We have almost 500,000 jobs that are tied to trade because we are a state that benefits from it, and we are a state that has a very unique history and relationship with Mexico. So I think the surest way to sink this effort would be to try to link payment of the wall for it. But Liz, I also have to note the danger for the U.S. that the Trump administration has put us in. I mentioned the fact that we had effectively renegotiated NAFTA through the TPP.
Right,
The
right.
11 other countries are intent on moving ahead from us. What would be an absolute disaster would be for the United States to allow the TPP to go into effect and then not have a successful renegotiation of NAFTA.
But other people view it as a disaster if you let it go forward and suddenly we have fewer jobs. But that's another conversation. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.